The war between humans and the had lasted 7 long years. Millions had died on both sides. Ships burned in the darkness of space every single day. Neither side could win, and neither side would give up. They were not like humans. They stood 8 feet tall with silver skin that glowed softly in dim light. They had 4 arms instead of 2, and their eyes were completely black like pools of ink. But their most dangerous feature was invisible. Every could read minds. They could push thoughts into your head and pull secrets out of it. They had used this power to conquer 12-star systems over 3,000 years. No species had ever defeated them. Until they met humanity. Humans could not read minds. Humans did not have 4 arms or silver skin. Humans were small and soft and lived short lives. They had expected to crush them in months. Instead, 7 years had passed and humans kept fighting. They adapted. They learned. They refused to break no matter how many died. High Matriarch ruled the Dominion from her throne world. She was ancient by human standards, over 400 years old, and she had never known failure until this war. The conflict was draining her empire. Resources that should have gone to expansion were being wasted on these stubborn primates from a small blue planet. She called her council together and proposed something that had not been done in centuries, a bonding marriage, an ancient custom where 2 warring peoples would join through union instead of battle. She would offer her youngest daughter, Princess, to a human male. This would create a bridge between their species and end the war. The council argued for days. Many saw it as shameful. They were superior beings. Why should their princess marry an animal? But was wise in ways they were not. She knew that this marriage would give them something better than military victory. It would give them access to human society from within. They could study humans, learn their weaknesses, and when the time was right, they could finish what they started. Earth's United Council received the proposal with surprise. Many human leaders did not trust it. They knew they were manipulative, but the people were tired of war. Young men and women kept dying on distant worlds. The council voted to accept. Now they needed to choose a husband. They made their preferences clear. They wanted someone unimportant, someone without military rank or political power, someone they could control. Earth's council searched through thousands of candidates before finding the perfect choice. His name was Danny Cole. He was 32 years old, born and raised in a small town in Nebraska. He worked as a cultural liaison officer, which meant he helped different groups understand each other. He had no combat training on his official record. He had never held a weapon in battle. He was calm, polite, and seemed completely ordinary. They were pleased. This human would be easy to manage. Danny received the news on a Tuesday morning. 2 officials from Earth's council came to his small apartment and told him he had been selected to marry an alien princess to save humanity. He listened quietly, asked a few questions, and then agreed. "Don't you want time to think about it?" one official asked. Danny shook his head. "If this stops the war, I'll do it. When do I leave?" 3 weeks later, he stood on an orbital station at the edge of human space. The station had been built specifically for this ceremony. Hundreds of diplomats from both species filled its halls, but Danny stood alone in the greeting chamber, waiting for his bride. The doors opened, and Princess entered. She was beautiful in a terrifying way. Her silver skin caught the light and scattered it like diamonds. Her 4 arms moved with perfect grace. Her black eyes fixed on Danny, and he felt a pressure against his mind. She was trying to read his thoughts. She found nothing. Pushed harder. Her telepathic abilities had never failed her. She could read any mind in the galaxy. But when she reached into this human's head, she found only silence. Complete and total silence. It was like trying to grab smoke. She hid her confusion behind a cold expression. Perhaps this human was simply empty. Perhaps his species had such primitive minds that there was nothing to read. That would explain their selection. They had sent her a hollow creature, a puppet with no inner life. "I am Princess of the Dominion," she said. Her voice was musical but carried no warmth. "You are the human called Danny Cole." "Yes, ma'am," Danny replied. He smiled at her and extended his hand. "It's nice to meet you." She stared at his hand without taking it. Among the physical contact was reserved for intimacy or combat. This human was already breaking protocol. "You will address me as Princess or Your Highness," she said. "Of course, Princess. My apologies." He lowered his hand without any sign of embarrassment. His smile remained gentle and genuine. Found this irritating. He should be afraid. He should be awed by her presence. Instead, he acted like they were meeting at some common gathering. The ceremony itself was brief. Bonds did not require long rituals. Spoke the ancient words, Danny repeated his vows, and it was done. They were married in the eyes of both civilizations. That night, aboard the shuttle that would take them to the flagship, tried once more to enter Danny's mind. She used every technique she knew. She pushed with all her strength. Nothing, just that same impossible silence. "Is something wrong?" Danny asked. He was sitting across from her, watching the stars through the window. "I am examining you," she said bluntly. "Your mind is strange, empty." Danny turned to look at her. For just a moment, something flickered in his brown eyes, something old and deep that vanished before she could identify it. "Maybe I'm just a simple guy," he said. "Not much going on up here." He tapped his temple and smiled again. Did not believe him, but she had centuries to figure out this human secrets. He was hers now, bound by law and custom. Whatever he was hiding, she would find it eventually. She had no idea that she was the one who had walked into a trap. Not a trap of conquest or cruelty, but something far more dangerous. A trap of patience. A trap of kindness. A trap set by a species that had learned to hide their greatest weapon behind gentle smiles and quiet voices. The war had ended. A different kind of battle was about to begin. The flagship was called the Ascendant Crown. It was the largest ship Danny had ever seen. Nearly 3 miles long, it carried 10,000 crew members and enough weapons to destroy a small moon. This floating city would be his home now. Danny was given quarters on the residential deck. The rooms were large and comfortable, filled with alien furniture that took him weeks to understand. The bed was shaped like a curved bowl. The chairs had 4 armrests. Everything was designed for beings very different from him. He did not complain, not once. The first month was the hardest. The crew ignored him completely. When he walked through corridors, they stepped aside but never spoke. When he entered common areas, conversation stopped until he left. He was an outsider, a strange creature that had somehow married their princess. They did not hate him exactly. They simply did not consider him worth their attention. Danny used this invisibility wisely. He watched everything. He learned the patterns of daily life aboard the ship. He memorized names and faces, even when those faces showed no interest in remembering his. He found the ship's library and began studying the language. Within 3 months, he could speak it fluently. This surprised everyone. Was considered one of the most difficult languages in the galaxy. Its grammar changed based on social rank, and its pronunciation required sounds that most species could not make. Yet this simple human from Nebraska mastered it like it was nothing special. "Where did you learn to speak so well?" a young officer asked him one day. Danny shrugged. "I practiced a lot. Your language is beautiful." The officer walked away, unsure what to make of this answer. Danny also discovered the ship's botanical gardens. A massive dome near the ship's center held plants from dozens of conquered worlds. Most crew members rarely visited. The gardens were tended by a small group of workers considered low in the social order. Danny began spending hours there every day. He helped with the planting. He carried water and trimmed leaves. He got dirt under his fingernails and sweat on his brow. The garden workers were confused at first. Why would the princess's husband do servant work? But Danny never acted like he was lowering himself. He acted like the work mattered. Slowly, the workers began talking to him. They told him about their home worlds, their families, their hopes. Danny listened to every word. He remembered every name. When one worker mentioned that her daughter was sick, Danny asked about her health every day until she recovered. Word spread quietly through the lower decks. The human was strange, but he was kind. Princess heard these rumors and did not know what to do with them. She had expected Danny to demand power or privilege. She had expected him to act like the aggressive warriors humans were known to be. Instead, he gardened. He made friends with servants. He spent his evenings reading books in her language. She visited him one night, months into their marriage. He was sitting by his window, watching a nebula drift past the ship. "You puzzle me," she said. Danny looked up. "How so, princess?" "You do not behave as expected. You do not seek power. You do not try to influence ship politics. You simply exist here quietly like you are waiting for something." "Maybe I'm just enjoying the view," Danny said. "I grew up in a landlocked state. Never saw much besides cornfields and sky. Out here, there's so much to look at." "You are not that simple." "Maybe not." Danny gestured to the empty chair across from him. "Would you like to sit?" Hesitated. In their months of marriage, they had barely spoken. She had avoided him out of discomfort and pride. But tonight, curiosity won. She sat. They talked for hours. Danny asked about her childhood, her duties, her favorite memories. Found herself answering honestly, something she rarely did with anyone. This human listened without judgment. He asked follow-up questions that showed he actually cared about her answers. When she finally returned to her own quarters, she felt strange, unsettled, like something important had shifted without her permission. Meanwhile, Commander had been watching Danny since the wedding. Was the ship's lead scientist, responsible for studying anything unusual. And Danny Cole was extremely unusual. The commander had noticed patterns. Equipment near Danny sometimes malfunctioned in small ways. Sensors reported brief temperature changes when he entered rooms. 3 separate telepaths had tried to scan him and reported the same impossible silence in his mind. Began keeping detailed records. He installed hidden monitoring devices in Danny's quarters. What he found disturbed him. When Danny slept, the devices detected energy readings that matched nothing in science. Brief pulses of something unknown coming from Danny's body. The pulses were weak, barely detectable, but they were real. Reported his findings to no one. He was afraid of being wrong, of looking foolish. But he kept watching, kept recording, and kept wondering what exactly the humans had sent them. Danny knew he was being watched. He had known since the first week, but he did nothing about it. He simply continued his routine, gardening and reading and being kind to everyone who would let him. One evening, a servant dropped a tray of food in the corridor. Before anyone else could react, Danny was there, helping her pick up the pieces. She was terrified of punishment. Servants who made mistakes were often disciplined harshly. "It was my fault," Danny told the officer who arrived to investigate. "I bumped into her. Please don't blame her." The officer stared at him. No one of high rank ever took blame for a servant. It was unthinkable. "Very well," the officer finally said and walked away. The servant looked at Danny with tears in her eyes. "Why did you do that?" "Because it was the right thing to do," Danny said simply. "Go get some rest. Everything's fine." Stories like this over the months. The human who took blame for others. The human who remembered every name. The human who worked in gardens and treated servants like friends. The human whose mind could not be read. Watched all of this and felt something she had never felt before. Not love, not yet, but curiosity that bordered on fascination. This creature was nothing like she expected, nothing like what the council had promised. She began to wonder if choosing him had been a mistake. She had no idea how right she was, but the mistake was not what she imagined. They had wanted a puppet. They had gotten something else entirely, something that watched and learned and waited with infinite patience. And somewhere deep inside Danny Cole, in a place no telepath could reach, a spark waited for the moment it would need to wake up. That moment was coming sooner than anyone knew. 18 months had passed since the wedding. The peace between humans and held, but it was fragile. Trade routes opened. Ambassadors traveled between worlds. The killing had stopped, and slowly, carefully, two species began learning about each other. Not everyone was happy about this. Deep within space, a faction called that had been growing in strength. They believed that they were the chosen rulers of the galaxy. They saw peace with humanity as betrayal. They called humans animals, vermin, a disease that needed to be cleansed. Their leader was a male named. He was a decorated commander who had lost his entire family in the war. His hatred for humans burned like a star. He believed that the High Matriarch had been corrupted, that the peace was a mistake that would doom their civilization. On a cold night in the 18th month, made his move. His agents had spent years placing supporters throughout the military. They had sabotaged security systems and bribed key officers. When the signal came, everything happened at once. On the throne world, assassins killed 2 members of the High Council in their sleep. 3 warships turned their weapons on loyal vessels and destroyed them before they could react. Communication channels flooded with propaganda, calling all true to rise up and reject the shameful peace. And in deep space, the Ascendant Crown suddenly lost power. The flagship drifted in darkness. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in dim red. Alarms screamed through empty corridors. No one knew what was happening. Princess was in her quarters when the attack began. Her guards rushed in and surrounded her, weapons drawn. The ship shuddered as something hit the hull. Boarding parties, her captain reported through the communication device. Multiple breach points, they are soldiers. Grabbed her ceremonial blade, the only weapon she had nearby. How many? Hundreds. Our defenses were sabotaged from within. We cannot stop them. The fighting spread through the ship like fire. Soldiers poured through the corridors, executing anyone who resisted. They moved with horrible efficiency, clearing deck after deck. Their target was simple: kill the princess who had contaminated her bloodline, and kill the human who had dared to stand beside her. Fought her way toward the command center with her remaining guards. Her telepathic abilities gave her an advantage, letting her sense enemies before they appeared. She pushed her power into their minds, making them freeze or turn their weapons on each other. But there were too many. Her guards fell one by one. She was alone when they finally captured her. 4 soldiers pinned her to the ground while a 5th bound her arms. She struggled and screamed, but without weapons or guards, her telepathy could only do so much. They dragged her to the bridge. Was waiting for her. He stood in the captain's chair like he belonged there. His silver skin was darker than most, marked with ritual scars that showed his devotion to the old ways. His black eyes held nothing but cold satisfaction. "Princess," he said, "how far your family has fallen, bonded to an animal, shamed before the galaxy." "You are a traitor," spat. "My mother will hunt you down." "Your mother has her own problems tonight," smiled. "The Dominion is waking up. The true are reclaiming what was always ours, and it starts with cleaning up the mess your family made." He gestured to the main, saw that the broadcast systems were active. This was being transmitted live across space and to human worlds as well. Billions were watching. "But first," continued, "we have a message to send." The doors opened, and Danny Cole was dragged onto the bridge. He looked terrible. His clothes were torn and dirty. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. 2 soldiers held his arms while a 3rd pushed him forward until he fell to his knees before. "The human husband," announced to the cameras. "Look at this pathetic creature. This is what your leaders wanted you to accept as equals. This weak, mindless animal." Danny said nothing. His head was down, his breathing steady. 7 years we fought them, continued. 7 years of blood and fire, and then we surrendered. We gave them one of our princesses. We pretended they were worthy of our attention. He drew a plasma blade from his belt. It hummed with deadly energy. Tonight, we correct that mistake. Tonight, we show the galaxy what happens to those who defile our bloodline. Struggled against her captors. Leave him alone, he has done nothing. He married you, that is crime enough. Walked toward Danny, blade raised. The broadcast captured every moment. Humans across dozens of worlds watched in horror as the peace they had hoped for crumbled before their eyes. Who supported the cheered at their screens. Danny lifted his head. His brown eyes met gaze. There was no fear in them, no pleading, just calm observation like he was watching something mildly interesting. Any last words, Animal? Asked. Just one question, Danny said. His voice was quiet but steady. You want to show the galaxy what humans really are. Laughed, I'm showing them you are prey, weak and worthless. No, Danny slowly stood up. The soldiers tried to push him back down, but somehow he kept rising, like their strength meant nothing. You are showing them what happens when you push us. Something changed in his eyes. The brown faded, replaced by a soft golden glow that spread outward like sunrise. Let me show them something else, Danny said. Let me show them why you should never have started this war in the first place. The temperature on the bridge dropped so fast that ice formed on the windows. Every telepath present, including, felt their abilities simply stop working. Their minds went quiet, deaf to thoughts they had heard their entire lives. His plasma blade flickered and died. He pressed the activation switch again and again, but nothing happened. And Danny Cole smiled. It was not a cruel smile, not a threatening smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting a very long time for this moment. You wanted to restart the war, Danny said. You wanted to kill me on live broadcast. You wanted to show everyone that humans are weak. The golden light in his eyes grew brighter. Thank you for giving me permission to prove you wrong. The ship groaned around them. Lights exploded. Equipment sparked and failed. The soldiers tried to run, but their legs would not obey. And in that moment, every being watching across two civilizations understood that something impossible was happening, something that would change everything. Danny Cole was not a puppet. He was not a simple man from Nebraska. He was something else entirely. And he was just getting started. The bridge of the Ascendant Crown had become something impossible. Ice crawled across every surface despite the heating systems running at full power. Gravity itself seemed confused, making objects float and drift without reason. And in the center of it all stood Danny Cole, glowing with golden light that no sensor could explain. Commander stared at him with pure terror. His plasma blade was dead in his hand. His legs would not move. His telepathic abilities, the gift that made superior to all other species, had simply stopped working. He could not sense anyone's thoughts. He could not push commands into other minds. For the first time in his life, he was blind and helpless. "What are you?" he whispered. Danny walked toward him slowly. With each step, the metal floor rippled like water. The soldiers dropped their weapons and tried to flee, but invisible barriers held them in place. For 3,000 years, Danny said, your people have conquered the galaxy with your telepathy. You evolved the ability to read minds and control thoughts. You used it to enslave entire civilizations. You believed it made you gods. He stopped directly in front of. The golden glow from his eyes cast strange shadows across the commander's terrified face. But you never stopped to wonder what other species might have evolved. You assumed telepathy was the ultimate power. You never considered that the universe might have other gifts to give. Danny raised one hand and lifted off the floor. He floated 3 feet in the air, held by a force that had no name in science. Humans evolved differently, Danny continued. We did not develop telepathy or physical strength or long lives. Instead, we develop something you cannot sense, cannot measure, cannot understand. We call it many things: willpower, faith, spirit, the fire inside. The broadcast was still running. Billions of beings across two civilizations watched as Danny spoke. His words were not angry or threatening. They were calm and clear, like a teacher explaining something obvious to confused students. Every human carries this spark from birth. Most never awaken it. They live their entire lives without knowing what they could become. But when we are pushed far enough, when we face impossible odds, when someone threatens everything we love, the spark ignites. And when it does, we can do things that break your understanding of reality. He gestured around the bridge. Your telepathy cannot touch us because our minds exist partly outside your dimensional framework. You are trying to read a book that is written in dimensions you cannot perceive. Your weapons fail because we can reject their function. We can tell the universe that plasma should not burn, and the universe listens. Struggled in the air. This is impossible. No species can do this. One species can. Mine. Danny lowered him back to the floor but kept him frozen in place. You started a war with us because you thought we were prey. 7 years of fighting should have taught you otherwise. We never surrendered. We never broke. Did you really think that was because we were lucky? He turned to face the broadcast camera directly. Now he was speaking to everyone watching. The human military knows about this power. Our leaders know. We kept it secret because we wanted peace, not fear. We sent me to this marriage hoping that we could build something real between our peoples without ever revealing what we truly are. But some of you would not allow that. His gaze swept across the captured. You wanted to restart the war. You wanted to murder my wife and broadcast my execution to humiliate humanity. You wanted to show the galaxy that humans are weak. The golden light flared brighter. So let me show you what we really are. Danny raised both hands. The entire ship shuddered. Every system rerouted itself, not through programming or commands, but through Danny's will alone. The lights that had exploded repaired themselves. The ice melted and vanished. The ascendant crown came back to life, fully operational in seconds. I just took control of this ship, Danny said simply. Not with hacking or technology, with my mind, with the part of me that touches the fabric of reality itself. I could tear this vessel apart and rebuild it into something new. I could reach out and stop the hearts of every soldier on board. I could broadcast a pulse that would blind every telepath in the star system. Fear spread across every face on the bridge. Eve, still held by her captors, stared at her husband with something approaching terror. Danny's expression softened. The golden glow dimmed slightly. But I will not do any of those things, he said, because that is not what this power is for. Humans did not evolve this ability to conquer. We evolved it to protect, to stand against impossible odds and refuse to fall, to save the people we love, even when saving them seems impossible. He looked at, you will order your soldiers to surrender. You will confess your crimes to the High Matriarch. You will accept whatever judgment she gives you, and you will tell your followers what you saw here today. And if I refuse, managed to say. Danny smiled sadly. Then I will make you. And believe me, Commander, you do not want me inside your head. Your telepathy touches the surface of minds. I can reach so much deeper. Broke. The terror was too much. He fell to his knees when Danny released him and began giving surrender orders through the ship's communication system. His voice shook. His words tumbled over each other. The commander who had murdered council members and planned genocide was now a sobbing wreck on the floor. The soldiers throughout the ship dropped their weapons. They had watched the broadcast. They had seen what their enemy could do. All their hatred and pride meant nothing against someone who could reshape reality itself. Danny walked too. Her captors released her and fled without being told. She stood frozen, staring at the man she had dismissed as simple and ordinary. "Are you all right?" Danny asked. His voice was gentle again, the golden light fading from his eyes. "I do not know what you are," she whispered. "I am exactly what I have always been, a man from Nebraska who wanted peace." He offered his hand. "I am sorry I kept this secret. I hoped I would never need to use it." Looked at his hand for a long moment. This was the same hand that had tended gardens, helped servants, reached out in greeting when they first met. The same hand that could apparently rewrite the laws of physics. She took it. "The council will have questions," she said. "They will have many questions. I will answer what I can." "And humanity, your leaders knew about this." Danny nodded. "Some of them. Not everyone has this power, and those who do cannot always control it. But yes, humanity has known for centuries that we are different. We kept it hidden because we did not want to be feared. We wanted to live in peace with the galaxy." He looked at the broadcast still running, at the billions who had just watched everything. "I suppose that secret is out now." The galaxy had changed in the span of minutes. The Dominion had learned that their greatest weapon, their telepathy, was useless against humanity. They had learned that the species they considered primitive animals could do things that violated every scientific law they knew. And they had learned that humans, despite having this power, had chosen peace instead of conquest. That last part scared them most of all. Because a species that chose kindness when it could choose domination was not weak. It was terrifying. The weeks following the broadcast were chaos. The faction collapsed almost overnight. Commander was taken to the throne world in chains, where he confessed everything to High Matriarch. His execution was swift and public. The message was clear. Those who broke the peace would face justice. But there were the smaller problem. The bigger problem was the question everyone was asking: what exactly were humans? Scientists demanded to study Danny. They wanted to scan him, test him, dissect his power into something they could understand. Delegations from a dozen species requested audiences. Everyone wanted to know if humanity was a threat, an opportunity, or something else entirely. Danny refused almost every request. He met with the High Council once, in the Grand Chamber where leaders had gathered for 3,000 years. 12 ancient beings surrounded him, their telepathic pressure pushing against his silent mind. They demanded explanations. "How many humans have this ability?" the council asked. "Unknown," Danny said. "It appears randomly. Some humans live their entire lives without awakening it. Others discover it under extreme stress. We have no way to predict who will develop it or when." "Can it be taught?" "No, it is not a technique. It is something deeper, like asking if you can teach someone to grow taller." "Can it be stopped, blocked?" Danny smiled slightly. "That is a dangerous question. It suggests you are thinking about fighting us again." The council shifted uncomfortably. Several members looked away. "I will answer honestly," Danny continued. "We do not know of anything that can block this power. Your telepathy does not work on us. Your weapons can be rejected by our will. We are not sure what our limits are because we have never needed to find them." "Then humanity could conquer the galaxy." "Yes," Danny's voice was calm. "We could. We choose not to. That is the part you should focus on." He stood and addressed all 12 council members. "Your empire spent 3,000 years conquering because you had power and others did not. You never asked if conquest was right. You simply did it because you could. Humanity thinks differently. We believe that strength without restraint is not strength at all. It is tyranny." His eyes met each of theirs in turn. "We want peace. We want trade and friendship and cooperation. We want to learn from you and share what we know. But understand this, we are not asking permission. We are offering partnership. If you accept, we will be the best allies you have ever known. If you refuse and try to harm us again, you will face consequences that your science cannot imagine." The council debated for 3 days. In the end, they had no real choice. The peace treaty was rewritten with humanity as equal partners. No more subtle manipulation. No more treating humans as inferior beings to be managed. The new agreement recognized both species as full members of the galactic community. Human ambassadors began appearing throughout space. They wore ordinary clothes and spoke quietly and made friends with servants and workers. They remembered names and asked about families. They behaved exactly as Danny had behaved aboard the Ascendant Crown. They could not decide if this was comforting or terrifying. Every single human might be carrying that impossible power. Every smile might hide the ability to reshape reality. There was no way to tell. This uncertainty changed everything. Officers who had once looked down on humans now treated them with careful respect. Trade negotiations that had been dismissive became fair. Cultural exchange programs flourished. Both sides discovered that they had much to learn from each other. Danny and remained together. Their marriage had begun as politics. Now it became something real. Spent months trying to understand her husband, asking questions that she had never cared to ask before. Danny answered with the same patience he had shown from the beginning. "Why did you hide your power?" she asked one evening. They were in the botanical gardens, the place where Danny had first made friends on the ship. "You could have revealed it immediately. You could have commanded respect from the start." Danny knelt beside a flowering plant, checking its soil. "Would you have respected me, or would you have feared me?" Considered this. Feared, probably. Exactly. Fear is not respect. It is not friendship. It is not love. He looked up at her. "I wanted you to know me as a person first. I wanted to earn whatever feelings you developed, not force them." That is a very human way of thinking. Yes, we believe that relationships built on fear will always crumble. Only relationships built on genuine connection can last. Sat down beside him in the dirt. Her formal robes would be ruined, but she did not care anymore. "You protected me during the attack. You could have simply escaped. You are my wife. Even if you did not love me yet, I loved you." The words hung in the air between them. Felt emotions she had spent centuries learning to suppress. Vulnerability, hope, something that might eventually become love. "I want to understand humanity better," she said finally. "Will you take me to your world?" Danny smiled. "My mother has been asking when she can meet you. She makes excellent corn casserole." "I do not know what that is." "You will love it, I promise." 3 months later, stood in a small kitchen in Nebraska. Danny's mother, a woman named, was teaching her to play card games while something baked in the oven. Danny's father sat in the corner, telling stories about Danny's childhood. A dog slept under the table. It was the most ordinary scene had ever witnessed. No servants, no protocol, no power displays, just a family sharing time together. She understood, finally, why humanity had evolved the way they did. This warmth, this connection, this simple love between family members was what they were protecting. Their impossible power existed to preserve these small, precious moments. The galaxy continued to whisper about human abilities. Scientists developed theories. Politicians debated responses. Some species considered humanity a threat to be watched carefully. Others saw them as potential saviors. Danny ignored most of it. He returned to his quiet life, tending gardens, reading books, being kind to everyone he met. When reporters asked how humanity would use their powers, he always gave the same answer: "We will not use them unless we have to. We did not evolve this ability to conquer or control. We evolved it to protect the things we love. As long as the galaxy leaves us in peace, we will remain peaceful. But if anyone threatens our families, our homes, our friends, then they will learn what we can truly do." The reporter would always ask a follow-up question: "And what exactly can you do?" Danny would smile his gentle, patient smile. "Hopefully, you will never have to find out." The never tested humanity again. Neither did anyone else. The peace held, strengthened by mutual respect rather than mutual fear. Trade flourished. Cultures blended. Slowly, carefully, the galaxy began to heal from the scars of the 7-Year War. And on a distant ship, in a garden filled with flowers from a dozen worlds, a human and a princess built a life together. Not because politics demanded it, not because power required it, but because they chose each other honestly and freely. That was the real power humanity possessed, not the ability to reshape reality, the ability to love. Everything else was just a tool to protect that love.